Chapter 301, a slightly different fight. The next pair of contestants entered the arena. One of them was Karen, who had a confident smile on her face, and the other one was Haru, a small woman carrying an enormous blade. When Yuna saw Haru, she couldn't help but chuckle a little and speak to Mai. Hee, by the way, did you know that Haru girl said that she is my fan, Mai? If Mai had been drinking something, she would have probably done a spit take after hearing Yuna's question. Why your fan? Why would she be your fan? While Mai looked at Yuna in bewilderment, a dangerous aura started leaking out of Hinata while she began muttering to herself. No way. Another one. When did that happen? Yuna chuckled in amusement when she heard Hinata's muttering but ignored it and answered Mai's question instead. She saw me behead the Sanbi with a massive sword, and since she uses a blade that is disproportional to her body as well, she became my fan. The aura surrounding Hinata got significantly weaker when Yuna finished her explanation, while a wry smile appeared on Mai's face. I see. Oh well, as long as she is only a fan of your swordsmanship, I have no complaints. Meanwhile, Harry was glaring daggers at Karen like she was her worst enemy, while Karen had no idea what she did wrong. Why are you glaring at me like that? I mean, we are supposed to fight each other, but you clearly have something against me on a personal level. Harry clicked her tongue in annoyance when she heard Karen's words and started speaking. Of course, I have something against you. You are Unisama's student, and, as her biggest fan, I'm not happy about that at all. Karen was taken aback by Harry's outcry, but she understood what was going on a moment later. Harry was jealous of her. A smirk appeared on Karen's as she started speaking again. Hee, student. I'm not just Unisama's student, I'm her personal mate. Harry's eyes bulged, and she staggered back a little when she heard Karen's words. She was just about to accuse her of lying when Karen hugged her own body and started wiggling around. Hee, and I'm also going to join her harem soon. Hee, I don't need to be a wife, I'm okay with being a mistress. No, what about a slave? Gahee, yes, I will be Unisama's sex slave, Guhee slurp. The more Karen talked, the more wretched her laughter became until she couldn't hold it in anymore and started laughing out loud. Moments later, she realized where she was, so she quickly stopped laughing and wiped her drool away. Meanwhile, Haru reeled back when she saw how Karen was acting, and soon as she stopped laughing, she pointed her finger at Karen in disgust. Why you damn pervert? Why does someone as noble as Unisama get such a wretched pervert as her student? This is unacceptable. I will kill you today, so Unisama no longer has to deal with someone like you. As soon as Harry stopped speaking, Karen couldn't help but look at her weirdly. Unisama noble. All kinds of memories involving Yuna were flashing through her mind, but none of them looked particularly noble. There was a scene of Yuna casually grabbing her, but while she walked past her, scenes of loud moaning that echoed over the whole building when Yuna forgot to activate a silencing seal, and a scene where she walked into Yuna's bedroom and saw Hinata, who was tied to the bed with Yuna standing next to it with a sadistic smile on her face. After pondering Harry's words some more, Karen resumed speaking. Yuna is a pervert, you know. Harry was surprised by Karen's words, but moments later, she got even angrier due to Karen's false accusation. Nonsense. I have seen her swordsmanship. Someone with such noble swordsmanship cannot possibly be a pervert. I'm sure she is very righteous and has excellent morals. She must be a great advocate of justice that would never do anything illegal. Karen couldn't help but look at Haru in pity when she finished speaking. Is this what people call hero worship? It's a little pitiful. Considering how I act when Yuna is involved, I can't comment on someone looking at her in worship, but I at least know about Unisama's real personality. I wonder how she will react when she finds out about what Unisama is really like. Well, since I'm Unisama's student, I should act in a way that she would approve, so let's cause some chaos and find out. I see, it seems like you have a wrong image of Unisama, so let me enlighten you. Unisama is the crystallized form of corruption. Whether it is childlike innocence or emotionless indifference, she will corrupt it. She will plunge it into the abyss of depravity, and if she has to, she will break the minds of everyone who resists. As soon as Karen finished speaking, thousands of eyes wandered from her to Yuna to see her reaction. Naturally, they expected her to be angry after being insulted like that, but Yuna's response was slightly different. Geez, you have become quite good at buttering up to me, Karen, but even if you praise me like that, I still won't reward you. Deafening silence reigned the arena when Yuna finished speaking. The most affected by her words was definitely Haru, who looked like her soul had just escaped her body. Meanwhile, Karen sighed in disappointment when she heard Yuna's words. Sigh, what a pity. I was hoping that after praising Unisama like that while annihilating the false image someone has of her, I would get rewarded. Well, it seems like Harry's only shocked by the sudden revelation, while her mind isn't broken yet. Maybe I should tell her a few stories about Yuna's exploits in the hopes that will finally shatter her sanity. I'm sure that Unisama will reward me if I manage to do that. Karen was just about to continue speaking when Harry fell on her knees with despair written all over her face. I give up. The proctor of the third exam couldn't help but be taken aback by Harry's words, so he asked her for confirmation before actually ending the match. Are you sure you want to give up the match? When Harry heard the proctor's question, she looked at him with empty eyes and answered him. Yes, the image of the person I adored just shattered. I am in no condition to fight. While the proctor was declaring Karen as the winner of the match, Karen noticed Harry's despairing eyes and looked hopefully at Yuna. Yuna pondered the current situation for a short while before nodding her head in agreement. Karen couldn't help but rejoice when Yuna gave her a nod of confirmation. He, as expected of the crystallized form of corruption. Unisama will really reward me if I manage to damage someone's sanity. If I want more rewards from Unisama, I need to learn how to corrupt people more efficiently. Maybe I should learn Jinjutsu. Chapter 302, Just a Little Massage. Just like that, the fight between Karen and Haru ended rather anticlimactically, and it was time for the next one. Neji Hyuga against Hisoka Hyuga. In the spectator stands, Mai had an annoyed expression on her face. Not only are all of her genin defeated, but the last one was defeated in such a ridiculous way. Couldn't you have denied Karen's claims, Yuna? Then Haru could have at least had a proper fight. Well, my student made up such a colorful description of me, so how could I possibly break her heart and dismiss it as wrong? Tsunade couldn't help but chuckle in amusement when she heard Yuna's explanation. And what is the real reason? Confirming her description would result in a funnier reaction. Yeah, I thought so. Mai's eyebrow twitched in irritation when she heard the conversation between Yuna and Tsunade and huffed in annoyance. Whatever, but you will have to compensate me for making one of my genin forfeit without fighting. Sure, how about I give her a sword lesson? I might not have the character she thought I had, but I can certainly teach her a thing or two about swordsmanship. Or did you maybe think of a more personal compensation? When Yuna finished speaking, she waggled her eyebrows, causing Mai's face to blush a little. A sword lesson will be enough. Oh? Are you sure? Just so you are aware, my massages can even turn gods into putty. Oh well, your loss. Massage. Of course. What did you think I meant? Mai glanced at Yuna, who currently had an innocent expression on her face, and scoffed in disdain. You sure of gets looking at me like that after happily agreeing to Karen's description of you. Thanks for the praise. Say whatever, I wouldn't mind a massage right now. Before Yuna could fulfill Mai's request, Hinata had something else to say. Personally, I don't recommend doing that. Mai couldn't help but look at Hinata with a smirk. Oh, Tilda, is someone jealous? I expected Hinata to get angry due to her teasing, but her reaction was completely different. She only raised her eyebrows, gave Mai a pity-filled gaze, and then shrugged her shoulders. Sure, let's just go with that. Mai was taken aback by Hinata's reaction but didn't know what to do with it. Moments later, Yuna's hand softly landed on Mai's shoulders, so she decided not to bother with Hinata's reaction anymore. Hee, no need to worry about Hinata, Mai. Let me give you a nice shoulder massage. Your shoulders must be pretty stiff due to all the paperwork, right? Mai nodded in agreement when she heard Yuna's words and decided to simply enjoy the massage. Meanwhile, Gaara and Tsunade's gazes met, and both of them nodded their heads at each other while sharing the same thought. Mai is in trouble. At the same time, the two fighters entered the arena and got into a fighting stance. While Neji took the typical gentle fist stance, Hisoka took a slightly modified one, causing Neji's eyes to widen in surprise. Is that really fine? Although I didn't plan to tell anyone about your modified gentle fist, if you use it publicly like this, there is no way I can keep it a secret. When Hisoka heard Neji's question, a wry smile appeared on her face that looked a little bit like she was about to start crying. Yuna-sensei said she would kick my ass if I lose due to not fighting with everything I have. Neji's eyes widened for a second before he nodded in understanding. My condolences. But what will you do about the Hyuga clan? Yuma-sensei said that I should just claim that she forced me to use it to mock the Hyuga clan. Again, my condolences. Hisoka really wanted to cry right now. No matter how much condolence Neji gave her, wasn't she still trapped between a rock and a hard place? Moan. The proctor was just about to start the match when a loud moan echoed through the stadium, resulting in everyone's head snapping towards the source of the sound. In the cage VIP box, Mai's face was flushed red, while her hands were frantically trying to suppress the sounds coming out of her mouth. Behind her stood Yuna, who had her hands on Mai's shoulders and casually massaged them while seemingly not even noticing Mai's plight. Everyone was looking at Mai in total bewilderment, with the exception of Hinata, who had a smug expression on her face. MMPH tried to warn you, but you didn't want to listen. When Mai heard Hinata's words, she tried to argue back, but before she could do so, another jolt of pleasure pulsed through her body, forcing her to cover her mouth with her hands to prevent another moan from coming out. Well, Hinata, no need to be like that. If you want, I can give you a massage as well. A light blush appeared on Hinata's face, but she nonetheless nodded her head in agreement. Oh okay, but let's do it in private. Haha, no need to be shy. I don't mind doing it in public. But I do. Meanwhile, Neji looked at what was happening inside the VIP box in bewilderment. What in the world is she doing? Hisoka gave the scene another glance before she answered Neji's question. From the way it looks, I think Yuna-sama in giving the Mizukage a massage. Neji's bewildered gaze switched from Yuna and Mai to Hisoka, who didn't seem to be fazed in the slightest. Why are you so calm? Isn't the whole situation utterly outrageous? Hisoka looked at Neji with dead eyes, causing him to flinch, and answered Neji's question. Karen is my teammate, and Yuna is my sensei. At first, Neji wasn't sure what Hisoka was talking about, but his eyes widened in realization after a short moment as he awkwardly lowered his head. Cough my condolences. Hearing Neji say my condolences for the third time, Hisoka finally snapped, and a battle intent exploded. Damn it, I don't need your shitty condolences, I need to become a Chunin to get away from this tain, so obediently lie down and get beaten by me. And so, the fight between the two Hyugas began with a desperate outcry that barely anyone noticed due to their attention being on the struggling Mai. Chapter 303, Hyuga vs. Hyuga. Neji couldn't help but be surprised by Hisoka's outcry. So far, he had never seen her show any strong emotions. Somehow, Neji really didn't want to know what she had to go through so far to push her to this extent. Nonetheless, he would still fight with everything he had, so he activated his Byakugan and prepared himself for the fight. Hisoka's palm strike approached him, and in the usual gentle fist fashion, he stood his ground and swatted it away with his own palm and went for a counterattack with the other. Unlike Neji, Hisoka didn't block the attack and dodged it instead. While Neji didn't move his legs much, Hisoka was constantly moving around. This was the modification Yuna and Hisoka applied to the gentle fist. Instead of relying on strong, deadly attacks that forcibly pushed through the opponent's defense, Hisoka went for fast footwork and agility. Meanwhile, in the Cade's VIP box, things have calmed down a little, and Mai was currently sitting in her seat with a loose smile on her face. Tsunade decided not to comment on Mai's current condition and watched the match between the two Hyugas instead. She couldn't help but be slightly interested in the way Hisoka fought. Seems like he taught Hisoka a modified version of the Hyuga client's gentle fist, Yuna. Naturally, I do not deny that the gentle fist is a decent fighting style, but it simply didn't fit Hisoka's body type. She herself was aware of that as well and had already started changing a few things before she became my student. Unfortunately, the Hyuga clan doesn't want its members to learn anything but the original gentle fist, so she had to do so in secret. Tsunade gave Hisoka another glance before she shook her head in annoyance. The Hyuga clan won't be happy about that. Yuna shrugged her shoulders in indifference when she heard Tsunade's words. It doesn't matter. I told Hisoka to put all the blame on me, and the Hyuga clan can touch neither my Uzumaki clan nor me. Tsunade held her head and groaned in pain after Yuna finished speaking. Do me a favor and don't destroy the whole Hyuga clan. No worries. I don't plan to. And even if something happens, I can guarantee you that no civilians will be hurt. Tsunade pondered Yuna's words for a short moment before nodding her head in agreement. That promise was acceptable for her. Unlike most people in Konoha, Tsunade had at least a rough idea about Yuna's strength due to Mida telling her about her fight with Yuna. So, she was fully aware that Yuna's level of power was no longer on a level she could contest against. The only person in Konoha who might still be able to threaten Yuna was Guy after opening all 8 gates, but Tsunade didn't know how strong that would actually make him, so she couldn't be entirely sure about that. Anyway, none of that mattered for the situation with the Hyuga clan since Tsunade was absolutely certain that they didn't have someone of that caliber in their clan since they would have already boasted about that person's strength if they did. Meanwhile, inside the arena, Neji had a frown on his face as he was defending himself against Hisoka's assault. He had already fought against her once and lost that battle, but it was at least a close fight at that time. Now, about a month later, Hisoka's strength had improved quite a bit, resulting in the gap between them widening. How did she manage to get this much stronger in only 1 month? Neji's gaze subconsciously wandered towards Yuna and then to Hinata before focusing back on Hisoka again. What kind of crazy training methods does Yuna have, and how are they so efficient? Neji shook his head to get rid of his idle thoughts and changed his stance, which immediately caused Hisoka to take some distance from him. Let's finish this, Hisoka. There is no point in prolonging this fight anymore. 8 trigrams 128 palms. Hisoka nodded her head and took the same stance as Neji. Unlike the usual gentle fist, this technique has a heavy focus on speed and precision, so it fit Hisoka rather well. Naturally, as a branch family member, she wasn't taught how to use it, but when she fought Neji the last time, he used it as well, giving Yuna the chance to copy it for Hisoka. Well, he used it inside the Uzumaki compound, so Yuna only had to tweak a few seals to make a recording of it. When Neji saw that Hisoka copied his stance, he could only smile wryly. A month ago, he managed to pressure Hisoka quite a lot with this technique, and now she could actually use it as well. He already expected to lose against Hisoka, but now his defeat was inevitable. Hisoka and Neji both started moving at the same time, and their chakra-filled fingertips met midair. Typically, Neji could pressure Hisoka in a contest of pure strength like this, but this technique didn't use much force to begin with, so that advantage fell almost entirely flat. Instead, Hisoka was the one at an advantage due to her superior speed. Their exchange continued as they started moving faster and faster, but only a few seconds later, Hisoka managed to get the first hit in. From there on, it only went downhill for Neji as more and more attacks hit him until he finally collapsed, with over 50 of his tenketsu being sealed. Hisoka sighed in relief when Neji collapsed and started speaking with Hen. "Well, I assume you give up, Neji." "Do I look like I am in the condition to continue?" "I give up." Back in the cage box, Yuna nodded in approval. Hisoka only had a month to learn that technique, and Yuna was satisfied with her progress. She could feel someone glaring at her and noticed rather quickly that Tsunade was the one responsible, causing Yuna to tilt her head in confusion. "Is something wrong, Tsunade? That technique Hisoka just used isn't taught to the branch family, right?" "Correct. A pretty stupid decision if you ask me. I understand that they don't want to teach it to outsiders, but what's the point of hiding it from family members?" When Yuna stopped talking, Tsunde's glare became even fiercer, causing Yuna to tilt her head in confusion. After thinking about it for a moment, Yuna realized what the problem was and chuckled in amusement. Now, calm down. I didn't break into the Hyuga compound to steal it. Neji used it in front of me, and I mimized it. Tsunade sighed in relief as most of her anger dissipated when she heard Yuna's explanation. "You mimized it after seeing it only once. This might surprise you, but I have quite high mental capabilities. Well, I usually use them to mess with people, so there is nothing that can be done about it." Tsunade snorted in disdain when she heard Yuna's answer and put her attention back on the arena where the next two fighters had already appeared. Lee and Shura, two people who can only use taijutsu. Chapter 304, The Semifinals. Lee and Shura entered the arena, and while Lee had an excited smile on his face, Shura's facial expression was neutral. "Shura, right. Honestly, I'm a little excited to fight someone who had to overcome the same hardships as I." Shura shook his head when he heard Lee's words but answered him nonetheless. "There is no point in bothering about past hardships. As long as you keep walking forward, your past does not matter. The only important thing is that your determination will never betray you." Lee chuckled in amusement when Shura finished his speech. "Although I agree that one shouldn't dwell on past hardships, what is truly important is youth. As long as my youth burns brightly, I will never lose." As soon as Lee finished speaking, he disappeared and reappeared in front of Shura with his fist already reeled back. A yellow aura started coating Shura's body as he crossed his arms to block the strike. When Lee's fist landed, Shura slid back a little but successfully blocked the attack, just for Lee to appear behind him and kick towards him. Shura gritted his teeth, and moments later, the yellow aura surrounding him got stronger as his muscles became more defined. This time, he managed to block Lee's attack without getting pushed back, and so the two started a high-speed close combat fight. Meanwhile, Yuna was looking at the technique Shura was using with some interest. "Oi, Kurama, you think he can transform into a giant monkey? Why in the world would he do that?" "Oh? So you haven't watched that memory yet? Please spare me your depravity." "Geez, don't be like that, Kurama. That is a normal memory and involves no depravity." "I somewhat doubt that, but fine." Just when Yuna finished her conversation with Kurama, Gaara started speaking. "This is a technique Shura developed himself. By forcefully taking in more oxygen, he can significantly increase the strength of his body for a short duration." Tsunade listened to Gaara's explanation, and after thinking about it for a short moment, she nodded her head. "I see, an interesting technique, but it will put a considerable burden on the body." "Indeed, but despite that, it won't be enough to defeat the current Lei." After Tsunade finished talking, Yuna added something as well, causing Gaara to nod in acknowledgement. "That seems to be the case. I didn't expect him to have grown to such a massive degree throughout the last few years. It's a pity, but Shira will probably lose. Tsunade couldn't help but chuckle in amusement when she heard Gaara's words. Hee, doesn't that mean that this is Konoha's victory? If Shira loses, then only Konoha's shinobi will be left. Gaara widened his eyes in surprise, and even Mai, who was still a little sluggish, responded by clicking her tongue in annoyance. That's only because we are in the middle of the desert. If we do this in Kuri the next time, Kuri's shinobi will show their true power. A small smile appeared on Tsunade's face as she nodded her head. I see, so we will hold the next Chunin exam in Kuri, huh? Naturally, Konoha will participate. Suna as well. And just like that, the location of the next Chunin exam was chosen. At the same time, Shira had an ugly expression on his face. He is not only strong and fast, his combat experience and skill seems to be higher than mine as well. I guess I have no choice but to go all out. Third activation. Boo, don't leave away the good part of the name. Shira thought he had just heard something weird from the audience but concluded that it was just his imagination. Moments after activating the third part of his technique, his skin turned red and his strength increased even further. Shira shot towards Lee far faster than he previously did and was just about to make contact with Lee's face when Lee vanished from his sight. A foot slammed into his stomach before Shira could understand the situation and sent him flying vertically into the air. Lee appeared behind him in midair, and the bandages around Lee's wrists started wrapping themselves tightly around Shira, causing his eyes to widen in surprise. He has a technique like mine as well. In that case, I never stood a chance. Initial Lotus. The duo started descending at high speed while they began to rotate around their own axis. A short fall later, Lee slammed Shira into the ground, resulting in a loud explosion. When the dust settled, Shira was revealed lying on the ground, conscious but unmoving, while Lee was standing next to him, breathing a bit heavy but otherwise fine. A few seconds later, a sigh of defeat escaped Shira before he gave up the match, causing Lee to lift his arms in high spirits. Yosh, my youth prevails. Meanwhile, Yuna flinched a little but managed to hide it from the other people in the room. Damn it, Kurama, why are you yelling like that? You know that full well, Yuna. You said that there would be no depravity in it, but there is plenty. Yuna tilted her head in confusion when she heard Kurama's words. As far as she remembered, that wasn't the case at all. Really, I don't remember there being anything like that in that show. That's probably because there isn't, but how about you remember what happened around you while you were watching parts of it? Yuna was even more confused by those words but nonetheless started rifling through her memories to see what Kurama was talking about, and moments later, she saw a scene with a lot of naked women staring at a massive screen, while a few others were doing other activities. Oops. Oops, my ass. You knew about this, didn't you? Haha, nope. This one was an honest mistake. Sorry about that. Damn it, I don't believe you for even a second. While Kurama was rampaging around in Yuna's minscape, Karen and Hisoka entered the fighting arena. While Karen had a confident smile on her face, Hisoka could only smile wryly. Her close combat heavy fighting style had horrible compatibility with Karen's style, so this match will be tough for Hisoka to win. But for now, the only thing she could do was give it her all and see where it goes. As soon as the fight started, Hisoka shot towards Karen at high speed to close the distance between them as fast as possible. Before she could travel half the distance, she had to dodge to the side to avoid one of Karen's chains, and before she could adequately stabilize herself, she had to dodge another one. This was precisely what Hisoka feared would happen. Unlike Yuna's chains that could freeze people or Kushina's that had very potent sealing power, Karen's focused purely on destructive physical power. Hisoka wasn't strong enough to block them, nor was she barely fast enough to dodge them, and the few long-range jutsu she knew were not strong enough to phase Karen. This was pretty much how all their spars went if Karen was allowed to use her chains. Meanwhile, Karen was pulling a Gara and stood unmoving in the middle of the arena. Two of her chains were constantly attacking Hisoka, while another one was staying close to her so that she could use it to defend herself. Very few noticed that the third chain that was seemingly protecting her was stealthily drawing seals in midair. The audience couldn't help but be surprised by Karen's domineering display of power. After all, what she showed in her first fight was less impressive. The cat-and-mouse game continued a bit longer before Hisoka decided that she had no other choice but to take a risk. She hasn't fought Karen since she loaned her 8 trigrams 128 palms, so she made a gamble that it would make her fast enough to reach Karen. Hisoka changed her stance and shot towards Karen at a much higher speed than before. The first chain came sweeping at her, which Hisoka managed to dodge by lowering her upper body, and moments later, she avoided the second one with a sidestep. By now, Hisoka was very close to Karen, and after dodging Karen's last chain with another sidestep, an expression of glee appeared on Hisoka's face. At the same time, Hisoka could clearly see the nervousness on Karen's face. 2. Hisoka's 2 hands shot forward in an attempt to seal Karen's first 2 tenketsu, but moments later, an ugly expression appeared on Hisoka's face as she felt that she had just stabbed her 2 hands into glow. The nervousness on Karen's face vanished as a dome of seals appeared around her in which Hisoka's hands were stuck. Tricked you know. Boom. Karen's fist smashed into Hisoka's stomach, resulting in her coughing out some blood and being sent flying into the arena wall. When the dust settled, Hisoka, who had a pained expression on her face, was revealed sitting on the ground. Cough, damn it, Karen, couldn't you have gone a bit easy on me? However, Karen only rolled her eyes when she heard Hisoka's complaints. I'm still a medical ninja. I know how hard I have to punch to defeat someone without dealing any severe damage. But it still hurts. I'm giving up, by the way. Can I get a healer that didn't just rupture my organs with a punch? Karen chuckled at Hisoka's antics, and moments later, she was declared the winner of the match. Additionally, after questioning Lee and Karen about their current condition, it was decided that there would be a half-hour break before the final fight. After all, Lee had just opened the first of the 8 gates, while Karen had something else to prepare for the last round. Chapter 305, Prelude to the Finale. When Karen said that she needed a bit of time to prepare for the next fight, Yuna chuckled in amusement. Seems like Karen is unwilling to go down without a fight. Tsunade couldn't help but look at Yuna in bewilderment when she heard her words. Can she actually win against Lee? Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Mai and Gaara could only mirthfully shake their heads. Konoha has always been considered one of the strongest or maybe even the strongest village, but nowadays, things get more and more out of control as the number of powerhouses inside Konoha rises at a ridiculous pace. The 30-minute break ended, and Karen and Lee stepped into the arena again, and as soon as Karen entered, exclaims of surprise went through the spectator ranks. A black cloak covered Karen's whole body, and even most of her face was hidden. Yuna, what in the world is she doing? Yuna chuckled when she heard Tsunade's outcry while multiple pairs of eyes landed on her with questioning looks. After all, that kind of cloak would heavily disturb Karen's movements, which would be fatal against Lee. Yuna shrugged her shoulders and motioned to the middle of the arena. Well, you will just have to wait and see, but in case you are worried about Karen, what she will do is less dangerous than the 8 gates or Shira's breathing technique. Tsunade sighed in relief when she heard Yuna's words. Although Karen was rather annoying to teach, she still loaned medical ninjutsu from Tsunade, so she didn't want her to get seriously injured. Now, she couldn't help but look forwards to whatever Karen would do. Moments later, the match started, but instead of charging towards his enemy directly, like he previously did, Lee warily looked at Karen. However, after a few seconds, a wry smile appeared on his face as he decided that there was no point in waiting. He was never much of a thinker, and Karen was clearly waiting for him to make the first move. Additionally, he wasn't exactly a patient person when it came to fighting. Whatever you are planning, my youth will break through it. Lee vanished, and far faster than most could see, his fist appeared in front of Karen, but just like Sai, Karen was used to fighting against Yuna, so she could not only see the attack, but even react to it. Lee was surprised that Karen caught it head-on with her open palm instead of dodging or blocking the attack. Considering the grunt of pain heard after the collision, Karen certainly took some damage from Lee's attack. He was just about to continue attacking, but before he could do so, his eyes widened in surprise and he hastily took some distance from Karen. Lee looked at his right hand that was just caught by Karen and slowly opened and closed it. It was much harder to move, and there were some black markings on his hand. Karen clicked her tongue when she saw that Lee had already found out what was going on and removed her cloak, resulting in a collective gasp of surprise going through the audience. TSK, you found out much sooner than I hoped you would. You have quite the insane instincts. Might as well not have bothered with the cloak. Right now, Karen was only wearing a red crop top that exposed most of her midriff and blue hot pants that exposed most of her legs, but her clothing choice wasn't why the audience gasped in surprise. Complex seals were drawn all over her body, with the most prominent one being the symbol of the Uzumaki clan, which was heavily adorned by other minuscule seals, placed over her belly button. Those with keener senses noticed that the hand that previously caught Lee's fist had fewer seals drawn on it than the other one. When Tsunade saw what Karen currently looked like, her eyes immediately bulged out in anger as she lifted Yuna up by the front of her shirt. Yuna, what in the world is that? However, Yuna was unfazed by Tsunade's anger and only looked at her in indifference. Haven't I already said that this is less dangerous than the 8 gates or that breathing technique? What are you getting so angry for? Tsunade froze a little when she heard Yuna's words and took a few deep breaths to calm her anger. The way Karen looked reminded her a little bit too much of Orokimari's cursed seal, so she lost control of her temper for a moment. I assume the seals on Karen's body are removable. Yuna could only roll her eyes at Tsunade's question. Isn't that obvious? Why do you think she wears so little clothing? The less friction there is, the longer it takes for those seals to lose their function. Additionally, why do you think she wanted that short break? She used it to draw the seals on herself. If those were permanent, why would she draw them only at the last minute? Besides, do you think that I would want to sleep with a widow that has seals drawn all over her body? The more points Yuna listed, the more awkward Tsunade felt before she simply let go of Yuna while looking at her sheepishly. Hee cough, so what do all those seals do? In an attempt to drop the matter, Tsunade tried to change the topic, which Yuna didn't mind. A dangerous smile appeared on Yuna's face as she inspected the seals drawn all over Karen's body. She noticed that Karen shuddered in pleasure when Yuna did so but ignored it. Well, the seals on her arms, legs, and head are primarily auxiliary seals. They do stuff like paralyzing, increasing gravity, increasing friction to hinder her opponent, and a few physical buffs to strengthen her own body and regeneration. The really good one is the one over her navel. That's the real monster. As for its functions, you will find out soon. Although the other people in the room were dissatisfied by Yuna's incomplete explanation, they still nodded their heads in understanding. Meanwhile, Lee got somewhat wary of Karen. He had basically no knowledge about seals, so he had no clue how to approach her. Yet again, he pushed his worries aside and attacked. What he knew about seals was that the more time you gave a seal master, the more danger you were in, so there was no point in waiting. When Karen saw Lee running towards her again, she got into a combat stance with her legs firmly planted on the ground and her hands wide open to catch Lee's attacks. Her fingertips started glowing in blue chakra, and 4 chains burst out of her back and started hovering above her menacingly. An uncharacteristically serious expression appeared on Karen's face as she prepared herself for combat. Come, Lee, I will show you how the Uzumaki clan fights. Chapter 306, Seals vs. Youth. Lee spun around in midair, sending a powerful roundhouse kick towards Karen, whose chains started moving instantly and blocked the mighty blow. Usually, such a strong strike would have sent her sliding sideward, but she firmly anchored her feet to the ground with chakra and stood her ground. One of her hands grabbed the leg her chains just caught, causing the seals on her arm to glow, while the other one shot towards Lee's stomach with its 5 fingers pointing forward. Lee's eyes widened in surprise when he realized that Karen wanted to seal off his chakra center and quickly slapped away the hand that was aiming for his stomach with his own, while his other leg descended on Karen's other hand, forcing her to break the hold on Lee's leg. The duo jumped away from each other, and as soon as Lee landed, he staggered a little due to one of his legs feeling much heavier than before. A satisfied smile appeared on Karen's face when she saw the frown on Lee's face. The one on your arm is for paralysis and the one on your leg increases its weight. Have fun dealing with your whole body being off balance. The frown on Lee's face became more pronounced, but after moving his arm and leg a little, his confident smile reappeared. This is not enough to stifle my youth. Like he wasn't bothered by the handicap he just received at all, Lee continued attacking with fierce fist strikes that were too fast for Karen to capture. She could block them, but those short moments of contact were not enough to apply any seals to Lee, and if she had to do so with her chains, then there was nothing she could apply in the first place. Unlike most Uzumaki, her chains could not carry seals. They kept going back and forth for quite some time due to both of them being confident in their stamina, but at the end of the day, Karen was an Uzumaki. Not only that, Lee's fighting style consumed massive amounts of stamina, and he had to compensate for his heavy leg and slightly paralyzed arm, causing Karen to gain the upper hand slowly. So, Lee decided to power up. He shot towards Karen far faster than he previously did, effortlessly weaved through her chains, and arrived in front of her, kicking her towards the sky. Lee noticed that Karen barely managed to block his kick by crossing her hands. The brunt of the attack still made her groan in pain. Just like he previously did with Shira, he appeared behind Karen, and the bandages around his wrist started binding Karen, causing her to click her tongue in annoyance. "TSK, only Unisama is allowed to tie me up. Besides, are you sure you want to come this close to me?" Before Lee could understand what Karen meant, his whole body stiffened. Not only did his body suddenly feel much heavier, he realized that all of his muscles appeared to be incredibly stiff as well, while he barely could use his chakra. What? Since Lee couldn't move his body anymore, the bandages binding Karen loosened, which allowed her to free herself from them and right herself in midair. The spectators immediately noticed that most of the seals that were drawn on Karen's skin had vanished, except for the complex-looking Uzumaki clan symbol on her stomach. She safely landed on the ground, while Lee crashed into it without being able to land correctly due to the stiffness of his body. "Tricked YA, you know. You probably thought that I could only transmit the seals through my hands, which was a feint. I can easily do it through my whole body, even if there are some clothes in the way." Lee shakily stood up, which was already ridiculous enough considering he had seals that were restricting him all over the body. One might think that Lee would give up now because he was incapable of moving his body, but that was not something Rock Lee would ever do. The determination in his eyes was burning as brightly as ever. "Ha ha ha, amazing. To think there would be even more people in my generation that could push me this far. However, my youth won't be extinguished so easily. Gate of life, open." Lee's power exploded as he opened the third gate, causing the rampaging chakra in his body to wash away the seals Karen put on him. The next moment, Lee vanished, and before Karen could react, Lee's fist smashed into her side, blasting her away and crashing her into the arena wall. The audience was silenced instantly as the person who was winning the match a few seconds ago was suddenly blasted into a wall before she could react. A short moment later, Karen stepped out of the dust cloud, with a trail of blood flowing down the corner of her lips and a slight limp in her steps. Except for that, she was seemingly unhurt and ready to continue. Lee's eyes widened in surprise when he saw that Karen was mostly fine after his attack, causing Karen to grin at him ferociously. "I might not be as sturdy as Unisama, but I am still an Uzumaki. A little tap like that is not enough to knock me out. especially not when I still haven't used my trump card. The fingertips on Karen's right hand started glowing with chakra again, causing Lee to get cautious of her next move. However, to everyone's surprise, the 4 chakra chains coming out of Karen's back vanished as she put her fingers on the seal on her stomach and spun her hand counterclockwise. Let me show you the true power of seals. Unseal. The moment her hand finished doing a half circle, the seal on Karen's body exploded into thousands of seals that covered her whole body in an instant. As soon as her entire body was covered in seals, black markings appeared around her eyes, while a dense, almost bezel-like cloak of blue chakra started covering her whole body. Lee's eyes widened in surprise when he felt the dense power radiating off of Karen, and just like it previously happened to Lee, Karen vanished from Lee's sight and moments later smashed her fist into Lee's side just like he did earlier. Lee was sent flying as well, but unlike Karen, he managed to right himself in midair and safely landed on his feet. Gate of Pain, open. Without another word, he opened the next gate, and the 2 people charged at each other, causing their fists to clash, producing a massive explosion. However, yet again Lee was the one getting pushed back simply due to Karen being protected by an incredibly dense chakra cloak. Gate of Limit, open. Another gate was opened, and yet again, the duo clashed, obliterating the arena floor and causing those in the front rows of the spectator stands to duck their heads in fear of getting hit by a stray projectile. Dozens of earth-shaking clashes shook the arena every few seconds, and while Lee could feel his stamina slowly reaching zero, Karen could feel the same happening to her chakra, while the seals on her body slowly stopped working as well. After another clash, both of them came to the same conclusion. This is the final move. Gate of View, open. A green aura erupted out of Lee's body as he opened the 6th gate, increasing his power even further. The first time he opened the 6th gate was against Yuna during the last Chunin exam, and he was never able to open it again since then. However, now it felt natural, just like breathing, to him. In his fight with Yuna, he opened it almost out of instinct, but now he knew exactly what he was doing. Karen saw Lee getting yet another absurd boost in power, and a frown appeared on her face. Somehow, she doubted that she could match the current Lee. Or that was at least her first thought, which was quickly pushed aside when she heard a yell from the cage VIP box. If you win, I will fulfill one of your requests, even if it is a perverted one. The moment Karen heard Yuna's words, unprecedented clarity washed over her whole being. The audience expected a perverted smile to appear on Karen's face, or for her to laugh like a degenerate, but nothing like that happened. Karen's face was marred with indifference, and she looked at the approaching Lee with cold and calculating eyes. She saw Lee running towards her, but unlike his usual high-speed movement, she could see every single twitch of his muscles. She calmly reeled back her fist and concentrated every single fiber of her being into one strike. First, her feet started moving, then her legs, torso, upper arm, forearm, and finally her fist. Her whole body moved to get the maximum amount of strength out of this one punch, and moments later, the 2 fists collided. Boom. A massive explosion shredded the arena to pieces, and the only reason no civilians were hurt was that a few shinobi were quick-witted enough to raise some earth walls before the final clash. Deafening silence reigned the whole arena as everyone waited for the dust to settle so they could see who came out victorious, and only a few seconds later, 2 figures, who were still standing upright, were revealed. Both of them were still in their respective combat stance, but the fight was over despite that. Lee was still trying to stand upright, but was occasionally swaying left and right, indicating that he was relatively close to fainting. Meanwhile, Karen had a perverted smile on her face and was still standing upright without the slightest movement. Unfortunately, she had lost consciousness while standing, making Lee the winner of the match. After the winner of the match was declared, deafening cheers echoed through the whole arena. The spectators expected a good show, but they didn't think it would be this dramatic. Instead of a bunch of low-ranking Chunin fighting each other, they got to witness the fight between 2 people who could clearly give a jonin a run for their money. How could they not be excited? Lee, who was bordering between being conscious and being unconscious, wanted to raise his fist to acknowledge the cheering audience, but unfortunately, as soon as he tried to move his hand, he entirely lost consciousness as well and fell to the ground, resulting in the audience cheering even harder. Chapter 307, Explanation about the seal. While deafening cheering echoed through the arena, no one in the cage viewer stand said anything as they were still looking at the unconscious Karen in disbelief. Or, to be more precise, they were looking at the slowly fading seal on her belly. The first person to recover from their shock was Tsunaid, whose head immediately snapped towards Yuna, who currently had a smug expression on her face. "What the hell was that, Yuna?" Yuna's facial expression became even smugger when she heard Tsunaid's question, and moments later, she started explaining. That was the accumulation of multiple years of research. First, natural energy. I have been researching natural energy for quite some time now and noticed relatively early that it doesn't work well with seals. If you try to incorporate natural energy into a seal, it will turn into stone. Still, I am not someone who gives up easily, so after a few years of trial and error, I finally managed to do it, seals that attract and store natural energy. While Tsunaid looked at Yuna in bewilderment, Gaara and Mai had no idea what she was talking about, which wasn't too surprising. Natural energy and senjutsu are pretty much unknown to most people, after all. Yuna was unbothered by their blank stares and continued her explanation. Second, Orochimaru's curse. She heard an angry growl from Tsunaid but ignored that as well. Or, to be more precise, the way the seal absorbs natural energy and infuses it into the human body. I wanted to combine my seal, which can store natural energy, with Orochimaru's that infuses it into a human body while attracting even more energy. Naturally, I didn't want to have anything to do with the way Orochimaru's seal distorts the user's body when used, so I had to modify it quite a bit. This way, it could instantly grant the power of Sage Mode without all that holding still nonsense. But there was still a small problem. Before Yuna could continue her explanation, Tsunaid opened her mouth and started speaking. The input of natural energy must still be regulated, since if someone were to absorb too much, they would turn into stone. So, only someone who can already activate Sage Mode can use the seal. As far as I know, that would mean that only one person could currently use it. Yuna nodded in approval at Tsunaid's analysis and continued her story. Correct. I was stuck with that problem for quite a while, but I actually struck gold around a month ago. As she said that, a small vial with transparent liquid appeared in Yuna's hand. Third, hero water. Now, everyone in the room, except for Hinata, looked at Yuna in confusion, causing her to chuckle. I'm not surprised that you don't know about it. Hero water is the secret weapon of Takeda. The one who drinks it will burn his lifespan in return for a massive, temporary increase in chakra quality and quantity. Tsunaid wanted to ask how Yuna got her hands on Taki's secret weapon, but then she remembered the young brown-skinned woman that had been running around the Uzumaki compound and asking people perverted questions. If I remember correctly, she appeared about a month ago. Oh well, that's Taki's problem, not mine. Although Yuna just explained the effects of hero water, that still didn't explain how exactly it helped her in the creation of that seal, so Yuna continued talking. So, I analyzed the hero water and its source to find out how the process of turning life force into chakra worked and how to replicate the effect using seals. Then, I modified the process so it burns excessive natural energy instead of life force. And finally, I had to combine all of that into one seal that I naturally made to look like the Uzumaki clan symbol. Oh, and on a side note, Karen could have used ninjutsu and senjutsu as well, but against Lei's speed, that would have been rather pointless. Everyone was in a slight daze when Yuna finished her explanation. A glint passed through Yuna's eyes as she opened her mouth again. The final product produces a combination of a weakened Sage Mode and the state someone is in after drinking hero water. I'm calling the seal Ultimate Supreme Uzumaki Sealing R. Yes, it's a very long, cool, and intimidating name. We do not doubt that. Yuna was just about to proclaim the name of the seal when Hinata interrupted her mid-speech. Yuna glared at Hinata, but she pretended not to notice Yuna's glare. Seems like I have to punish a little girl tonight. Now that I think about it, Karen didn't say the technique's name either. It seems like I don't have to punish another little girl tonight. Whatever, you mortals aren't worthy of hearing its true name anyway. Meanwhile, Tsunade got out of her daze and realized what kind of implications such a seal would have. Just imagine if every single shinobi in Konoha could go into a pseudo-sage mode when they needed to. Before Tsunade could issue those thoughts, Yuna shook her head and started speaking again. I know what you are thinking, but it is not that easy. That seal still has a lot of flaws. No security flaws, mind you, but other problems. For example, if I were to inscribe it on your body, it wouldn't work because the chakra I used to write the seal would clash with yours and the natural energy the seal would try to store. So, for now, it can only be used by people who have the skill to inscribe it on themselves. Additionally, if multiple people have seals on them that suck up natural energy, then it will take much longer for the seals to be fully charged. Well, in the end, this one is just a proof of concept. Now it is time to refine it to my standards. Mai and Gura both sighed in relief when Yuna finished listing the seal's flaws. Their villages might be allied with Konoha, but if every single one of Konoha's shinobi could power up like Karen just did, then they might as well surrender immediately. However, Tsunade wasn't sure if she should be happy or sad about the apparent flaws of the seal. On the one hand, the number of mission casualties would probably drop to 0 with that seal. On the other hand, if their enemies could get their hands on that seal, fights between shinobi would be even more destructive and would probably level the elemental nations. Naturally, Yuna was aware of the danger of that seal as well, so her research would, unfortunately, get stuck at the problem that shinobi had to draw the seal on themselves. Chapter 308, Meeting Her Students. The Chunin exams were over, and Yuna was currently leisurely walking through one of Suna's hospitals. Apparently, all 3 of her students were in the same room, so Yuna decided to pay them a visit. However, instead of concentrating on where she was going, she was deep in thought. This was the first time the seal Karen used at the end of her fight with Lee was pushed to the limit in actual combat instead of on a test field, so Yuna was currently pondering on what to improve and what to add. Despite being absent-minded while walking, Yuna quickly found the correct path due to her good senses. In front of the door stood a Suna shinobi that was probably dispatched here as a guard. As soon as the guard saw someone approaching, he wanted to stop that person, but he froze up when he saw who it was. Welcome, Uzumaki-sama. I assume you are here to meet your students. Yuna nodded at him while barely noticing his presence and walked through the door he held open for her. When the guard saw that Yuna didn't pay any attention to him, he sighed in relief. Phew, I thought she might be angry that her student didn't win, but that doesn't seem to. Splat. Meanwhile, Yuna awoke from her contemplation and looked back at the now-closed door. After a few seconds of staring, she shrugged her shoulders and resumed walking towards her students. While Hisoka and Sai were already awake and were looking at her, Karen was still unconscious. Did you just cake that guy out of reflex? My Tao is steadily improving. I'm somewhat afraid of what the future holds. Yuna inwardly chuckled at Kurama's words but didn't comment further on them. She approached the 2 people who were already awake and started speaking. So, how are you 2 feeling? An awkward expression appeared on Sai's face as he answered Yuna's question. Not too great. I was hoping to get further than the quarterfinals. Yuna pondered Sai's words for a moment before she nodded her head in agreement. Honestly, you should have. Your level is already more than enough to become a Chunin. Unfortunately, you had to fight against Lei, who is not only very powerful, but his speed has a massive advantage against preparation-heavy jutsu like yours. At least you had one proper fight where you could demonstrate your skills. Personally, I would promote you to Chunin, but I can't make any guarantees. Good job anyway. Sai nodded his head in acknowledgement while a genuine smile appeared on his face. Sai, as always, breaking someone's mind is the best way to unearth their emotions. Usually, this is where I would call you out on your bullshit, but considering there was already a preceding case with Gara, I am not even sure what to believe anymore. You just have to believe in the DA. Nope, not doing that. Yet again, Yuna chuckled inwardly due to Kurama's words, and moments later, her gaze landed on Hisoka, who could only sigh in annoyance. Sigh, although the half finale is not bad, I was hoping I could at least make it to the finale. Well, considering how many strong people participated this time, I guess I can't complain. Indeed, there were quite a few heavy hitters this time. And let's not forget that you got a pretty bad matchup just like Sai did. Karen's chains are pretty much a perfect counter against you. Strictly speaking, Lee's taijutsu and Lee style would be considered an optimal enemy target for you, but Lee is a little too fast for that to work. However, if it was against Shira, I think you might have won. Hisoka thought about Shira's fight against Lee for a moment and nodded her head in acknowledgement. I guess I could have won against him, although it would have been a close call. Yep, and just like I did with Sai, I think you should be promoted to Chunin when we get back to Konoha. Well, even Neji, who you defeated, might be promoted. Tears almost spilled out of Hisoka's eyes when she heard Yuna's words. Finally, I can be free from these two degenerates. She probably only wanted to whisper these words to herself, but unfortunately, Yuna had excellent ears and heard her. A dangerous smile appeared on her face that made Hisoka flinch. Well, I enjoyed being your teacher quite a bit, and I'm sure that, after a little bit of bribery, Tsunade will readily agree not to promote you yet. How about we have a little more fun together until the next Chunin exam? Hisoka's face paled when she heard Yuna's words. Without a second of hesitation, she bowed her head and apologized. I'm sorry for what I said. Please don't do that. I can't take this anymore. Any more of your depravity and my mind might shatter. While Hisoka was talking, her facial expression was constantly switching through different emotions. Well, her emotions only went from desperation to fear and back, but it was more than she could show at the start. Considering that she showed off her angry facial expression during her fight with Neji as well, Hisoka's emotional arsenal has increased quite a lot. You seeing this, Kurama? When we first met, she was pretty much expressionless, and now she can show such diverse facial expressions. Sai, mind break for the win. Haha, no need to worry, Hisoka, I'm just joking. I'm sure you will become a Chunin as soon as you return to Konoha. Good job. Just like Sai, a happy expression appeared on Hisoka's face when she heard Yuna's words. See, Kuram. Yeah, I get. Mind break for the win and all that. Hee, it's good that you understand. A few moments later, Yuna noticed that Hisoka and Sai seemed pretty healthy, so she asked them another question. By the way, why are you still lying in here? From what I can tell, both of you are fine. Hisoka and Sai glanced at each other for a moment before Hisoka shrugged her shoulders. Yes, we are pretty much only waiting until someone dismisses us from here. Yuna rolled her eyes and let her senses wash over Hisoka and Sai, and a moment later, she noticed that both of them were fine. Both of you are fully healed while only your chakra isn't fully recovered yet. Just get out of here already. A pout appeared on Hisoka's face when she heard Yuna's words. I bet Yuna-sensei only wants to get rid of us so she can make out with Karen. Hisoka immediately regretted her words after she spoke them, as a wicked smile appeared on Yuna's face. You think I minded if people are watching me while I make out with someone? Are you looking down on my shamelessness? Hee, how about I? Before Yuna could finish speaking, Hisoka got up from her bed at lightning speed and ran out of the door. Whatever Yuna wanted to say, she didn't want to hear about it. After all, no matter what Yuna would say, it would undoubtedly damage her psyche some more while causing even more unwanted pictures to appear in her head. Next, Yuna's eyes landed on Sai, who quickly mimicked Hisoka's actions. Although he didn't know what exactly was going on, after spending quite some time as Yuna's student, he at least knew when it was time to leave. Finally, Yuna's gaze landed on Karen, who was still pretending to be asleep. "So, could you tell me why you didn't call out the name of my seal when you used it, Karen?" Chapter 309, The Embarrassed Karen. Karen stiffened when Yuna noticed that she was awake and even brought up the fact that she did not say the name Yuna had given the seal out loud. I just thought that its name is too magnificent and that the audience wouldn't understand how incredible it is anyway. Yuna eyed Karen with suspicion, causing cold sweat to flow down her back like a river. A short moment later, Yuna nodded her head in approval. "I see, it's good that you understand, Karen." Karen sighed in relief when Yuna accepted her excuse, but moments later, she realized something else. "Wait a moment, wouldn't Yuna-sama punish me if I didn't make any excuses?" Maybe I should tell her that I didn't say the technique's name because I thought it would be too embarrassing to do so. Maybe Yuna-sama will punish me with a spanking. A spanking over her lap. A naked spanking over a lap. While Karen's mind was drifting further and further into her fantasies and her facial expression grew more deranged, Yuna chuckled in amusement. She could easily tell what was going on in Karen's mind right now. "Well, it's good that that is your reason for not saying the name out loud. If it was something else, I might have to punish you, after all." Karen immediately snapped out of her thoughts when she heard Yuna's words. "Gulp, just out of curiosity, what kind of punishment are we talking about, Yuna-sama?" Yuna pretended to ponder on Karen's question for a moment before she seemingly came to a conclusion. "Well, first of all, I would put on a costume that will make me look like a strict teacher." Karen eagerly nodded her head when she heard that Yuna would put on a costume while simultaneously wiping away the drool that was coming out of her mouth. Slurp. "Oh, okay, and then?" Well, since I will look like a strict teacher, you will obviously have to put on a costume that makes you look like a naughty student." At this point, Karen could barely contain herself and was already thinking about simply admitting that she didn't say the seal's name because she didn't like it. "Then, I will force you to sit down and... Then... Gulp tea then. You will have to write down 100 different technique names, and you will only be allowed to get up after I approve of all of them." Karen instantly froze up when she heard what kind of punishment Yuna had in store for her, as her plans to confess what she did evaporated immediately. Without a second of hesitation, Karen bowed her head towards Yuna. "Please don't force me to do that, my mind might actually collapse." Yuna chuckled in amusement when she saw Karen's severe facial expression. Ha, easy, easy. I was just joking. No need to exaggerate like that." Pretty sure she wasn't exaggerating, though. "Sire, guess you are correct. There is no way a mortal could think up so many amazing technique names in one sitting, after all. A mortal mind simply can't stand so much pressure. Sure, let's go with that." Meanwhile, Karen sighed in relief when Yuna said that she was just joking. Although she liked getting punished by Yuna, she had a somewhat different kind of punishment in mind. Naturally, Yuna was aware of that as well, so she sat down on Karen's bed and grasped Karen's chin with her hand. "That aside, aren't you forgetting something, Karen?" However, Karen only looked at her in confusion. No matter how much she thought about it, nothing came to mind. "I'm sorry, Yuna-sama, I don't know what you mean." Out. Even Yuna was slightly surprised by Karen's request. She wasn't expecting Karen to actually request something that could be considered a punishment. She thought for sure that it would be something perverted that could be viewed as a punishment, not the other way around. Naturally, Yuna didn't mind. I see. In that case, do you want it to hurt, or do you want it to feel pleasant?" Well, Yuna already knew the answer to that, but considering how much Karen was struggling right now, she decided to keep her like this a bit longer. It was rather fun to watch the usually bold Karen blush and stutter like this. Meanwhile, Karen knew precisely how she wanted to answer but was too ashamed to say it. A few moments of struggling later, Karen gritted her teeth and managed to get over her embarrassment. Birth. Oh my Tilda, you are quite greedy. Yuna pulled Karen even closer, almost causing their noses to touch. In that case, when we get back to Konoha, I will punish my naughty maid with a spanking. Before Karen's brain could short-circuit due to shame, Yuna leaned forward some more and kissed her on the lips. And well done in that fight. Almost beating Lee is no small achievement. However, Karen didn't even hear Yuna's praise, as she was still frozen in place. Although Yuna had done a few perverted things to her, they had never kissed before, so that was her first kiss. Karen reeled back with a shriek and looked at Yuna in complete bewilderment. Why you just KKK kissed me? Yuna could only look at Karen, who couldn't even speak properly due to shame, completely dumbfounded. I literally used you as a chair while spanking your butt. Why are you so embarrassed from a simple kiss? I don't know. It just feels like it is something completely different. Well, yeah. I would say a kiss is first or second date stuff, while used as furniture and spanking is around fourth date stuff. Used as furniture and spanking on the fourth date. Really? I guess you are right. That's more like fifth date stuff, isn't it? Right, that's totally what I meant. Yuna nodded her head in approval and focused her attention back on Karen, who was still flustered from the kiss. Well, for now, get some rest and heal up. We will be returning to Konoha soon. Karen managed to get out of her daze when she heard Yuna's words and nodded in acknowledgement. Yuna was just about to leave the room when a wicked smile appeared on her face. She turned around and started speaking to Karen again. Oh, and if you want that spanking, you need to request it from me while there are at least 2 other people in the room. CYA, and get well soon. Moments later, Yuna left the room in a good mood, leaving a heavily blushing Karen behind. Chapter 310, Preparing for the Future. Now that the Chunin exams were over, things calmed down considerably, so Yuna decided to make some preparations for the future. Currently, she was climbing a mountain. But she was not climbing some random mountain, she was climbing Cloud Peak Mountain, the highest mountain in the elemental nations that was in the middle of the Land of Frost. Well, the word climbing didn't fit the situation entirely. Yuna had both of her hands in her pockets, wore light clothing, and was currently walking up an almost vertical cliff. Despite the freezing temperature, the heavy wind, and her light clothing, Yuna had a comfortable expression on her face as she was leisurely walking up the mountain. While walking, she closed her eyes, spread her senses, and moments later, she hummed in satisfaction. Yep, this place should work out well. What in the world are you planning, Yuna? You will see. It's something important for the future. After a few more minutes of walking, she reached the peak of the mountain, and moments later, a colossal ice sword appeared in her hands, and her whole body got covered in blue, red, and white chakra that was mimicking the form of an 8-tailed fox. Well, let's get to work. Yuna concentrated for a short moment and then swung her sword horizontally through the mountain, slicing a good chunk of its peak off, creating a plane that was surprisingly smooth considering how it was made. Simultaneously, hundreds of small iced pillars rose from the freshly sliced plane and supported the top part of the mountain so that it wouldn't crash down again. Yuna's arms continued swinging around her sword as the top part of the mountain was cut into more manageable slices that were then transported away by her tails. After about an hour of work, Yuna had created a perfectly smooth plane without any blemishes and a diameter of about 25 meters, the perfect canvas for what she was about to do. Okay, be honest with me. On a scale from 1 to 10, how much does this have to do with world domination? Yuna chuckled in amusement at Kurama's words before shaking her head. You know full well that I have no interest in world domination. That didn't answer my question. Ugh, fine. Although I have no interest in world domination, if I had to give what I'm about to do a rating, I would give it a 3, maybe a 4. Oh? That is surprisingly low. I am surprised. In that case, let me change the question. On a scale from 1 to 10, how much does this have to do with pranking people? Well, this might surprise you, but almost nothing. A 2 at best. What? Yuna snickered due to Kurama's outburst, walked towards the middle of the freshly created plane, and sat down cross-legged. Her 8 tails vanished and were replaced by 8 chains instead. Yuna took a deep breath, and moments later, the emotions on her face disappeared while the tips of her chains started glowing blue. All 8 chains started moving independently and began carving a ridiculously complex array of seals into the newly created plateau while Yuna was simply sitting cross-legged in the middle of it. Around half an hour later, Yuna's chains stopped moving, and Yuna sighed in relief as emotions returned to her face. Phew, that was exhausting. Oh well, let's start this bad boy, and then we can go back. I have a terrible feeling about this. Geez, don't be like that, Kurama. I swear that this is nothing dangerous. Moments later, Yuna's chakra cloak appeared again as she started pumping ridiculous amounts of chakra into the middle of the seals. Are you sure this isn't something dangerous? The chakra expenditure is ridiculous. Yeah, no worries. It's only hard to activate. As soon as it is started, it will run independently. A few seconds later, all the seals Yuna had previously drawn shone in white light, and a short moment later, they simply stopped doing so, without any change in the surroundings. Thank God, that was a dud. Why are you thanking me first and then calling my creation a dud? It works exactly as it is supposed to. Okay, I'll just ignore the God comment for now. What do you mean by it works as intended? It isn't doing anything. Oh? Are you sure about that? Kurama frowned when he heard Yuna's words, and he started paying more attention to what was happening on the outside. After a short moment of thinking, his eyes widened in surprise. Natural energy is gathering at a slow pace inside your seal array. Correct. The insides of the seal will slowly accumulate more natural energy. This is basically a slow-loading natural energy battery that solely focuses on capacity while paying no attention to the accumulation speed. If I calculated everything correctly, this should be more or less full when we need it. Kurama thought about Yuna's words some more before nodding his head in understanding. I see, you will use it at that time to speed up our progress, huh? That certainly makes sense. Well, let's put the finishing touches on this and get back to Suna. Konoha's delegation should be leaving soon, and I don't want to pull a Kakasha and come a few hours late. Yuna took out a total of 10 kunai and pierced them evenly into the ground around her freshly created seal, and moments later, a pure white dome covered the plateau. Yuna inspected the dome, and after seeing that everything was in place, she nodded in satisfaction. Good, although clouds almost always cover the peak of this mountain, this should prevent anyone from seeing what happened to its peak even if the clouds were gone. Additionally, even if someone randomly decided to climb this mountain, the dome can easily deny them access and will warn me that there is a possible intruder as well. With this, everything should be in place. Yuna gave her new creation another look before nodding her head in satisfaction and teleporting back to Suna.